Hey, welcome to the Overshare Pamphlet. My name is Rob, and I'm the host of this one-man show coming to you every Monday, 6 a.m. UK time. And today we're talking about something that has been, circulating on the internet for quite a couple of days now, and it's something that has been generating a lot of conversation. And it specifically involves one very specific actress, Sydney Sweeney. Sydney Sweeney is the newest, I would say, victim of cancel culture, maybe. Perhaps, question mark. I'll give you my answer at the end of the episode, of course. But yes, this has been something that has been, on my mind for quite a couple of days now, because I actually didn't know if I wanted to talk about it, to be fair, because it is quite a complicated conversation, I think. It's a very nuanced conversation as well. So I don't claim to know the answer to anything in that sense, but I do have some opinions on the situation, and I do want to share my view on what's going on. And there's surprisingly a lot to go over in that sense. So I thought it would be a good idea to just make an episode about this in general. But yeah, so before we get into that, stick around for the last section of the episode where I'll give you my usual songs of the week, maybe, and you can find all the songs of the week for each month in a specific playlist that I make each month. You can just simply search on Spotify, do Overshare Pamphlet, songs of the week, dash whatever month and year we're in. So this is going to be the first group of songs for the month of August 2025. So watch out for that. And you can find all my previous playlists, of course, on there as well. So yeah. What next? Yeah, and before I get into the main topic, follow me on social media, follow me on everywhere that you want. My handles are all in the descriptions of the episodes, so you can find them there, and you can stream the podcast, of course, everywhere you want. Everywhere you listen to your podcast, like on any platform, it's available. It's even available on YouTube. So, go to town with that. anyways, so let's get into Sydney Sweeney's jeans fiasco. What has happened? Sydney Sweeney, basically, who, well, up until recently, she was the newest, Hollywood's bombshell figure, I guess, female bombshell figure. She turned overnight, I would say, most of it, into the newest victim of cancel culture, at least online, for the past couple of days. So what happened briefly, I can say that basically, she recently put out an ad for American Eagle promoting, mostly the product, which was, the jeans, the denim. But yeah, this specific ad seems to have been the tipping point of her campaign to pander to conservative audiences and the male gaze, as in like the the patriarchy, not the gays, not the actual queers, the gays, the viewpoint. Anyways, people finally had enough. I think that's the sort of like general lesson that I've learned from this situation. It seems that people have had enough with her specifically, but I think it just in general it's also a reactionary sentiment that has escaped from maybe some inner circles towards the greater audiences, specifically internet users, I would say, and they have turned against Sydney Sweeney specifically in this instance, but it's been something that has happened not too long ago already. So that was already a prelude for this. The previous one that I'm of course referring to was the Sabrina Carpenter situation, but I'll touch upon that in a few moments. Now, first, did she stretch? Well, who is her actually? Who is Sydney Sweeney? Who is she? Who? How do we get to her specifically? Well, she is, as I said, the newest bombshell in Hollywood, but she's been around for quite a bit. She's quite young, actually. She's just 27, but she's been making her way through Hollywood for quite a bit now. She first started getting recognition in Everything Sucks, then The Handmaid's Tale in supporting roles basically, and Sharp Objects, and then she got her breakout role, I guess most of all, was with Euphoria, playing Cassie, and that I think also gave her a taste of what her strong suit is. I would say, I would venture to say that that's what really put her on the map specifically for her sort of role, and what the idea is that her character in that show tangos with, like the specific sexualization of women and her image specifically as a blonde white woman, with a specific type of body, and all that, which is partially already explored in Euphoria. But I think, as it usually goes for the internet, sometimes things get taken also the wrong way, and she became very, very famous also between a lot of incels, I would say. A lot of, men who are very much obsessed with her. So I think that sort of gave her a window into what she could exploit to get more exposure, right? But anyway, she also appeared in other projects. Like, I think I do remember her in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She was definitely there, still like up and coming. She had a very small role, but she was definitely quite memorable there, I would say. And then she also took infamously Margaret Qualley, well, Jack Antonoff's wife and star of The Substance, was also in that movie. But yeah, then she became. There are other movies that she's been in that have been, sort of noteworthy. Are Anyone But You, which generated also a lot of conversation, a lot of controversies for her, and then also Madame Web, which was a very bad movie, very poorly received, of course, but still was nonetheless a topic for the internet to talk about. But yeah, so she's a full American girl. She grew up in a very religious family, from as far as I've seen on the internet, from digging a bit. And she was born in Washington. She's was at 27 years old, and she relocated, of course, to Los Angeles when she was 13, as many of these aspiring actresses do, to try and break into the acting world. I didn't know this, but she was also a guest star. I never noticed her in those, but she was a guest star in Pretty Little Liars, Grey's Anatomy as well. And I think she got more into the high school scene in terms of for the TV shows with Everything Sucks, maybe. And then when she got into HBO with Sharp Objects, that was her way into then eventually getting into Euphoria, I would say. So yeah, so she definitely established herself quite early on, and it definitely led her to become this new figure, I guess, in the hot bombshell of Hollywood that has been occupied for many years by other actresses like Angelina Jolie for a certain time, Julia Roberts, I would say, for a bit as well. Dakota Johnson was sort of what she was also reminding me of for a bit, but I think her range seems to be very much contained within that aspect. I did find it interesting that she was venturing for a bit into the horror genre. I think she also produced with her then partner. I'm not sure if they're still together, but they produced this movie that was quite indie in that sense. Well, she was already quite famous, so I found that quite interesting and quite different. But I'm not sure if she's going to pursue that or what's going to happen to that. But yeah, I think that was also noteworthy to mention in that sense. So, that's sort of like in a nutshell who she is and how she became famous in the first place. But yeah, so despite her career being like sort of already quite in the making, I think she's always been the one thing that I always remember about her specifically as a consumer, I guess, is like the amount of controversies that she's been in already. I remember the infamous MAGA hat picture that was floating around a couple of years ago, and then of course the movie with Glenn Powell was a huge topic of conversation, whether she was stretching it too far with the co-star, and then if people were questioning whether her and Glenn Powell were actually just simply trying to spark up the chemistry for the movie, to promote the movie, or if there was actually anything happening between them. And while she was still, I think I can't tell you if she was married or not, but she was definitely with someone at that time as well, who happened to be the producer, I think, for the movie as well. But anyways, so there was already quite a lot of conversation around that. People were pointing the finger at her for being, usually how, male audiences go, that she was being a bit of a, not trustworthy woman and all that stuff, the usual conversations. And then I think the most recent scandal, I guess, before this latest one, was the soap water, like the bathwater soap thing that happened. She basically was trying to sell a soap that was perfumed after her bathwater or something. Very interesting move. And that, of course, sparked a lot of conversation that, did not necessarily become like a cancellation moment, but people were already looking out for, her next moves and whatever she's going to do now. So you can see that, she's not a stranger to controversies, and people have been looking at her career with a magnifying glass for quite a while now. And I would say, as I said, like since Euphoria brought her, to the larger audiences under that specific like light of being, very sexualized and all that stuff, with many problems around that as well. I think that's been her biggest cross to bear in that sense, but she's also been, I wouldn't say she's not culpable either, because she's been leaning into it quite a lot. Not to say it's wrong to lean into your sexy side, but I'll get more into that in a second. But anyways, so yeah, as I said, like, there's been a connecting thread between that, like between all of these controversies that she's been in, plus, as I said, the very recent situation with Sabrina Carpenter also was quite, similar to this. The internet was on fire when she posted her cover art for her newest upcoming album coming out at the end of August. Sort of referencing, a very submissive woman, a very dated idea of that, like, man's best friend being, her comparing herself to a dog. We'll go into, I have an episode about this specifically as well, so please go listen to that as well. But yeah, so quite a lot happened there already. So I think the environment on the internet was already quite ready for this, I would say. Like, it was only waiting for an excuse to just, go ham on someone, But yeah, I think it generally also speaks largely to what has become of the general internet culture, but also sort of like what point of at what point we're at the moment with just politics as well in general. I think the turn that the US took with Trump's second term has been quite dire and quite drastic, and I think this is also sort of like a reflection and also at the same time a reactionary phenomenon to that. So you see a lot of, I think on the one hand you see a lot of like quote unquote liberal audiences on the internet trying to, police her for sort of pandering to the male gaze, but also on the same by the same on the same token we have conservative audiences that I would say trying to moralize the whole situation and say that she's being a bad influence for women, and she shouldn't be showing her body like this, and shouldn't be showing her sex appeal like that. It should be more demure, I guess. Wrong term, but so I think it is definitely like more if you look at it from in information, it seems more like a it is an interesting commentary on what's going on with people on the internet and what people are thinking these days, and what are the main strong ideologies that have been dominating our culture, I would say. So yeah, there's a lot of anti-feminist conversations that are happening very often on the internet, on X, on Twitter, but also any other form of social media at this point. So, and I do attribute part of it to the Trump administration, but also the Trump administration happened because, people are swinging towards that right-wing ideology more these days. So quite interesting commentary on what's going on, I would say. Now, as I said, I already talked about the Sabrina Carpenter situation before, in a different episode. I do invite you again to check that out. But I think it is important to stress that the two situations, in my opinion at least, quite different. They have some similarities, of course, but I think there's also some nuance there that needs to be, faced. Sabrina is known, I would say, for a very tongue-in-cheek and often, to be very tongue-in-cheek and being very playful with what she does, with how she presents herself, and even when she goes for these very sexualized images or those wink-wink performances or lyrics or whatever, there's always, this idea and this humor behind them that sort of stresses that she's not taking itself too seriously, like she's not taking these ideas and these aesthetics too seriously. I think we cannot also judge her album cover situation yet without fully having listened to the album itself. It's a project of, after all, you need to actually first listen to what's the content of it and see if she does play on a dime and she's gonna turn on a dime and play with the idea even more and make fun of it at the same time with the whole a man's best friend idea, the very damsel in distress situation. So I wouldn't be surprised if he actually does. I think, as I said in another episode, that I think she's just flirting with the idea and generating conversation and being, putting the album, on everyone's mouth in that sense for the marketing purpose. But then when you actually get to the album, you're going to see that there's a bit of a shift and a play on the whole image as well. But again, I'm not putting my final sentence in this because, again, as I said, the album is not out. I'm waiting for the music to speak for itself. So we'll see what happens with that. But I would say, yeah, this specific, the latest one with Sydney Sweeney, the American Eagle one, is a bit different. I think the most problematic part is that the double entendre that they were going for in the ad is the main problem here, that stretched it too far and went into whole new area that shouldn't have been open in the first place, I think. The double entendre here is, of course, the word jeans, right? So the ad itself plays with the double meaning of both jeans as in the denim, but also jeans in genetics, right? Sydney Sweeney in this ad, which is a very short ad as well, says in a very seductive voice, genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. And then she ends by saying, "My genes are blue," with the ad then delivering the usual line for American Eagle, Sydney Sweeney has good genes, So now, on first glance, I think it doesn't seem to be too problematic, maybe, for some people, but I think the problem is created entirely by, which is also, again, created entirely by her own lines, arises from the fact that the ad equates genetics with genes, right? As a quote-unquote joke. But then also ends the ad by saying that Sydney Sweeney has good genes, the trouser, which can be read also as she has good genetics, right? So what's worse is the person delivering the line, who is Sydney Sweeney, is white, blonde, with blue eyes, and has, a very desirable body for many men, and, sends the entire message into a whole different semantic area, I would say. Many people are calling, into the conversation, eugenics and how this is, bringing a very backward idea to the forefront, and it shouldn't be like that. And I agree with that 100%. I think, I don't think, but yeah, exactly. I don't think this was intended necessarily, but I do think that this, unfortunately, is something that should have been avoided, and nothing that has to do with genetics should be played into an ad about clothing and looks and all that stuff, because it's just simply not, nice. Let's just be honest. It's not, something that you want to talk about. You don't want to be on a simple level be reminded that maybe you don't have the best genes, the best genetics, you're not proud of how you look and all that stuff. All these people were like in these, which is, by the way, average people on the internet are feeling like that in that sense, are very insecure. You should not play into that, I think, personally. So, but again, I don't think that was necessarily what they were going for. They were not, I assume, I would hope, thinking about that. So, but unfortunately, that's the outcome of it. People have taken it already as it is, and that's just the way we are. Like, the situation where it's at. But yeah, so it's a very difficult stance to defend in that sense. That you cannot. I don't think you can really defend this situation without necessarily, at least giving it to the benefit of the doubt, saying that they were not really intending to do that in the first place. And I do think that that's the case, but it was a fiasco in the department, like the way it was perceived. What's even worse, in my opinion, is that it was reported actually that Sydney was willing to go for a very sexualized ad and a very, male gaze centric advertisement, and it does also play with a very another infamous Gene advertisement done by a 17-year-old, by then 17 or 16-year-old model that played like with the a very sexual idea of the denim part, and I say like nothing comes in between me and my denim, meaning that she was not wearing any underwear under her jeans, and she was only 16, just underage. It's very similar to that. I'm sure you can definitely find it on the internet, the comparisons, and that was not. That's something that you do not want to also bring into this conversation. So I think a lot of errors were made on this that should have been avoided. But I do also, on the other hand, genuinely think that they were trying really hard to pander to the male gaze and to be very direct with presenting Sydney Sweeney in their best bombshell persona, right? Which is also, by the way, what she's been trying to build for years now, I think. But yeah, I think I they did stretch it a bit too far, and it did end up backfiring. Now, as I said in my Sabrina Carpenter episode as well, I do not find an issue whatsoever with women feeling sexy and showing their sex appeal. Anyone who goes against that, I think, in the name of conservative ideas, or even worse, in the name of feminism, there are some people like that, believe it or not. I think it's simply a bigot. Like, whoever does that is simply a bigot and does not actually understand what feminism is in the first place. It shouldn't be about, being extremely specific about what a woman should or should not do. That's the whole point that should not be made. Like, it's all about freedom and about not controlling someone's body, wink wink, even to those self-proclaimed feminists who are saying that she's being too male gaze pandering in that sense. So what? Like, there's nothing wrong with feeling sexy and trying to feeling good about the way you look and all that stuff. Like, it's all about being confident in how you are and what you want to do, That's the truth. But again, as I said, like, I didn't have any problem with that whatsoever. Even in our previous controversies, quote unquote, I never really found any issue with that, because I think it was just like a bit of an exaggeration of, that's clearly what she wants to do, I think, and just let her be. That's her, persona that she wants to pursue, and that's what she's low-key become famous for. So nothing wrong with a girl trying to get her bag like that, you know what I mean? What I do find a bit more difficult to entertain now, however, is how direct sometimes the whole persona is. Like, how too much on the nose it has become for Sydney. The fun part about Sabrina, for example, is, who also, by the way, plays a lot with that image, is that she's very self-aware, even in her music, and no idea or aesthetic is taken too seriously, like, ever. She makes sometimes fun of herself as well, sometimes in the lyrics, like, about her height, about, how she ends up, going for the wrong man, and, like, being too, she's self-deprecating at times, but she jokes about it herself, and in turn it makes the whole situation a bit, I think, wildly more endearing in a way, and very much more nuanced and entertaining. Sydney's choices up until now have not bothered me, but yeah, I mean, at all, I would say. All the insults who have commented on her image are simply just that, insults. But this one specifically, the American Eagle one, was a bit too much, I would say. and had too many undesired effects. And, I've seen her reaction to it. She's already posted a video in tears, and I understand her frustration and feeling, like crap right now, that she's being ridiculed by the internet, and I feel sympathy for that. I think it's horrible, of course, to receive this sort of hate. But yeah, I think, she should have been helped in maybe staying away from certain topics and certain ideas. She could, certainly, I mean, she was probably not counseled very well, but it is what it is. I think at the end of the day, people might forget about it. Maybe they won't. I'm not sure. But I do not think this is the end, I guess, of her career, like in any event. I think if anything, it sort of strengthens her core audience in a way. Many people I've seen online are saying that this was a fiasco in the way they misread the target audience or what the target audience want. And I counterclaim by saying that most of you guys have had the wrong target audience in mind in the first place. Like, she's not trying. I don't think she's trying to sell jeans to teens and young adults. Although that is what American Eagle wants to do, I don't think her making the ad about jeans and saying all these things, she's not herself trying to sell jeans. I think she's more trying to sell her own image to men while generating a lot of chatter about, conservative ideas and like by riling up conservative audiences. So, did it go wrong? Yes, but I'm sure a lot of men who are obsessed with her in the first place found this whole situation, even this whole ad, even more interesting and effective in a way. So, yeah, I do think her image was affected in a certain way, but on the other hand, I do think also that she will soon have a clearer picture of who her real audience is. And after all, her bathwater soap did sell out in record time, so there is definitely something there, So where does this leave us? I don't know. I think it's just people need to probably counter these conversations with a bit more nuance and try to understand what's going on. But also, it's everyone's right to sort of cloud a situation that made them feel uncomfortable at the same time. So everyone is entitled, of course, to form their own opinion and do what they want with it. But yeah, I just think it's important to have a bit more of a nuanced conversation over this. So yeah. Anyways, that's my 2 cents on this. I talked for quite a while about this, but to close it off, songs of the week. I think it's time for that. I think it's time for that 100%. What have I been listening to? First off, White Cat by Eve. She's my girl is back. My girl is so back. This is sort of, it reminds me so much of like Beauty and the Beat by Justin Bieber and Nicki Minaj, but it's sort of like that 2010s music as well. The lyrics, I read the lyrics and I still don't know what the hell she's talking about, what the white cat has to do with anything. But yeah, I mean, that I don't really care about, but it's just a very infectious song and I really, really like it. I think it's very interesting. There is a very specific production here at play, which is, again, as I said, like a bit more reminiscent of 2010s and party music in a way. I like it a lot. So Eve, I'm tuned in for your new EP, girl. I'm ready. I'm ready to be listening to new songs, and I think she has on her album. I think there's going to be also a song with Pink Panthers, so that's going to be quite the track. So yeah, then I don't know if I talked about this in the other episode. I probably haven't. But Tyler, the Creator, came out with a new album not too long ago, Don't Tap the Glass. And he has so many good songs on there. I think my favorite one might be Ring, Ring, Ring. But again, as I said, like the whole thing is just incredible. Ring, Ring, Ring is a bit more like R&B-ish, but he has a lot of hip-hop tracks on that, which are also incredible. Like Stop Playing With Me, Sugar on My Tongue, I think is also pretty good. There's a lot of good songs on there, so I would suggest to go and check it out and see for yourself. Tyler is, really honing his production skills, I think, overall, more than, well, I was also very impressed with the line delivery and everything else, but I think it's just his production is just incredible. He has a very specific sound that made him famous in the first place for a reason. So yeah. And what else do I really like? I really liked To Be a Man by Martin Luke Brown. This one is more like depressing. It's more like a guitar stripped down acoustic record, and it's quite the song, I would say. Definitely not for the weak. I mean, it is a sad song, to be fair. Call my mom, call my dad, call a therapist, or walk around looking down with my head down low. I had a friend, now I don't. He was 29. You get the gist. It's a bit like that. It's a bit wompy. So yeah. I also do like Sick With It. I think this is a very bad bitch anthem-y song. The production here is just insane. Like, it's very aggressive and very harsh. The bass line and everything is just really good. So I do suggest, if you like something like that, to check it out as well. And yeah, I mean, great stuff. The Subway came out by Chapel Roan. That's a great song, but I'm not sure if I'm clicking with it 100% yet. I do think, however, the new Slater song is incredible, so I might include that, which is it's the lead single, I think, to her new album coming out soon under Columbia Records. I don't want to be wrong. Columbia Records, yes. But the song is called Beat Up Chanel's, and it is a very recession pop club anthem situation, and I do again urge you to check it out because it is incredible. But yeah, with that said, that's it for today, but please do feel to check out all my other episodes, and I'll see you very, very soon with a new episode next week. And yeah, keep on slaying. Bye.